Ready to elevate your credit understanding and score? With insider tips and a plan, you can take action to improving your score, which can save thousands in unnecessary finance charges. Let's tackle today's topic with your coach, Credit Kristi.
Hey friends, it's Kristi, your credit coach. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode. Today, let's talk about why you may not get qualified for a credit card that you've applied for. As I'm sifting through information to provide for you through this podcast, I often find myself at the website of the CFPB, Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. I know, a little boring. And also a great resource is NerdWallet. So I was reading through an article on nerdwallet.com, and it's entitled, "I have good credit, why don't I qualify for that card?" So you may have a great credit score, or you think that you have a well-established credit history that should allow you to qualify for a credit card that has, say, bonus miles or points that you can use for other things. Or maybe it just has a really exceptional and low APR. You might expect to just get an automatic approval, but what happens if you don't? Why wouldn't you get an automatic approval? So credit card issuers are usually banks and lenders, and they look at many factors when they're considering an application. So it is more than just your credit score. So you've heard me, if you've listened to other episodes, really drive home how important a great credit score is. The better your credit score, the better your opportunity for approval for certain things like car loans, mortgages, and credit cards. And also, the higher your credit score, it typically equates to lower interest charges. But part of the approval process for anything that you might be applying for typically goes deeper than just your credit score. So although it is very important, it is not the only factor. And keep in mind that these lenders and banks on the backside of these credit card issuers, they have their own sets of guidelines, and they don't always express what those guideline parameters are to us. So they have their own ways and factors of determining eligibility, and they do that based on their own requirements that they have set up to protect their risk. So what do I mean by risk? If they allow you a credit card and you don't pay that balance, they may never recuperate that amount of money that you've put on that credit card, essentially taken from them if you're not paying it back. So sure, it could become a collection account, and they could put efforts into collecting it that way, but there are costs involved with assigning it to a collection account. A lot of times it gets settled for pennies on the dollar and usually not the entire amount. And they have essentially floated that balance that has been outstanding for months and months or even years before it gets paid, if it gets repaid. Perhaps based on past experience on certain profiles, they may say these are our hard and fast rules. So why is a credit score important for approval? Well, it's typically a summary of your track record with other sources of borrowed funds. It's essentially a snapshot in time of your ability to borrow money and pay it back on time. How are you doing with managing your obligations? So they're looking at the length of your credit history. If you've only had a credit card for 6 months and that's the only thing to your name, however, you have a 750 credit score, that credit length, or rather lack thereof, might be more important to them than your 750 credit score. Some credit issuers may require some kind of track record with a certain length of time, maybe 12 months or 24 months. And they're also looking at your payment history. Are you paying late? Are you missing payments? Or are you making them on time? And then there are larger factors such as, was there a recent bankruptcy, where it could indicate either some financial problems or a mismanagement of money. The other thing that the credit issuer might be looking at is your credit utilization. We've talked about this in other episodes, and it is so very important when it comes to credit cards. So what is a credit utilization ratio? That is basically the relationship between the limit allotted to you and your outstanding balance. In a perfect world, creditors love to see that as low as possible. And the credit reporting bureaus, TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, will judge you upon that credit utilization. So if you have a $10,000 credit limit and you have a $7,500 balance outstanding, you are overutilizing that ratio at 75%. In a perfect world, they'd like to see it at least 30% or below. So for every $1,000 that you have on your limit, try to keep your balance at any given time below $300. And if you haven't experienced it on your own, your credit scores will suffer if you are over that 30% debt utilization. Now, on your credit report, income is not calculated in. However, if you are applying for a credit card, or quite frankly, any other type of credit like an auto loan or a mortgage, income is absolutely considered. Now, a credit card company may not make you prove it by providing a W-2 or a pay stub, but definitely on a mortgage, you could expect to have to prove it. Now, why do we have to prove income? Because federal law allows lenders to extend credit only when they believe that that borrower, if you're borrowing money, you're a borrower, has the ability to repay it. So how do we prove that? We have to prove that you have income as a way to satisfy that credit obligation that is outstanding. In addition to how much income, they also have to look at how stable your income is. So if they do ask for a recent employer or two, and it appears that you might be job jumping a little bit, that could be a factor into your approval or non-approval of the credit line you are applying for. They're also looking at other debts. So why are you looking to get a new credit card? Is it because you have several others and they're maxed out and you need a new credit card to try to sustain your lifestyle? If so, you might experience a non-approval of your request for a credit card. So if income is a factor on this application, you might have too high of a debt to income ratio, which might have them presuming that you would struggle to pay that payment each month. And the only time a creditor can discriminate on age is if you're too young. So in other words, you could be 99 years old and applying for a credit card, an auto loan, or a mortgage, at least in the US. Overseas, there are very different restrictions. In other words, you could be too old to take out, say, a 30-year mortgage, but that's not the case here in the US. But if you are under 21, you'll face income requirements that are mandated by the federal government. And also, if you're applying for a credit card under the age of 21, but over the age of 18, you may experience the requirement of getting a guardian or parent to sign off or approve of you getting this credit card, which you may not appreciate or like that, but I think it is an amazing law that had gone into effect actually not even too long ago, and it really helps protect young adults, especially as they're walking onto, say, a college campus, from getting bombarded with credit card offers and applications for this free t-shirt, and then finding themselves getting into debt that they cannot manage and actually has them starting off this first chapter of adulting on the wrong foot. Okay, so why might there be some other reasons that you don't get approved for a credit card that you apply for? You just simply may not be their target customer. There are certain credit cards that want a certain profile of a client or customer of their particular cards. There are actually some credit card companies out there that want a customer that carries a balance forward each month because that's their gravy, baby. That's where they make their money, is on the interest that you pay, carrying that balance forward every single month. Those people are referred to as revolvers, which means you rack up interest charges because you're carrying a balance forward every single month, where the opposite is called a transactor. The transactors pay off their balances every month in full and only just use it for the simplicity or maybe even the reward points of having a credit card. However, you cannot be rejected on legally protected characteristics such as race, sex, religion, some of those really important protected parts according to the Federal Equal Credit Opportunity Act. But you just may not fit their profile as far as who their ideal customer is. Now, according to this article in nerdwallet.com, they gave a couple of examples on why a creditor may have some of their own restrictions that have really nothing to do with your credit score, your depth of credit, but more or less your actions in building your credit profile. So here's an example according to nerdwallet.com. Chase has a 5-24 rule. Well, what does this mean? That means that Chase has a restriction for any applicants who opens up 5 credit cards from any credit card issuing company within the last 24 months. So if you are applying for a Chase credit card, Chase counts that application as one of your 5 allowed approvals. So if you are in a hurry to build up your credit profile and you have already applied for 4 credit cards in the last 2 years, then that application with Chase is going to be that 5th application. And your application, according to this article, says you won't get approved. And then finally, let's round this out with what your overall credit profile and score says about you. For example, most scoring models go up to an 850 credit score. Some of them now go up to 900, but the majority that are used is about an 850 as a top end credit score. And the average credit score in the US at the time of this recording is somewhere around the 680 range. So 680 out of 850 is about an 80%. And you might think that that's a good credit score, or at least good enough. Well, that's actually like a B- if you were looking at scores inside of a school system. So if your credit scores start in the 600s, I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of my other episodes that teach how to improve your credit, what it takes to have a great credit profile and great credit score, and also what lenders are looking for when they're looking at your credit application if you're applying for a loan. Knowing these things can really help improve your credit scores and have you paying less in interest charges and have more yeses for the things that you do apply for in your life. Now listen, if you have errors on your credit report, you can get that cleaned up, and sometimes removing those errors can have a positive impact on your overall credit score. And remember, if you do get rejected, it's not a rejection of you per se. It's a rejection of your application or maybe who you are as a customer in their eyes. You may just not simply be their target customer, or there may be some things that you can improve upon and try again in the future. I remember way back when I had just gotten a Discover card, and I think it was maybe 20 or 21 years old. And I was really grateful that Discover was my first credit card I ever had, and that they took a chance on me because I didn't have a very deep credit profile, and my credit history was very, very thin because of my young age. And I remember feeling kind of confident, maybe artificially, because of that Discover card approval, and I went and applied for an American Express. Well, in hindsight, I had no business trying to get an American Express because the card that I had applied for would have to be paid in full every single month. It literally wouldn't allow you to roll over a balance forward. It's called a charge card as opposed to a credit card. And if I was having a tough month financially, that could have really put me in a pickle. So in hindsight, I'm very grateful that I got that decline or rejection from American Express. But I remember throwing my fist up in the air saying, I'll never apply for American Express again. You're dead to me. Well, I've kind of held true to that because I have not ever applied for another American Express, but mostly just because I don't need another credit card. I have a card I've had for a very long time. It's good to me. I want that long-standing credit history because remember, once you close something up, it's no longer part of that algorithm. It has the proper rewards and travel benefits that I'm seeking, so I just don't simply need another credit card. I think I have forgiven American Express and moved on from those feelings from 20-something years ago, but my point being is try to separate the feelings and emotions if you do get a rejection when you apply for something and see how can I learn from this experience? What are they saying is the reason for the rejection of approving my application? And how can I make this look better or stronger or less riskier in the future so that I might consider applying again? I hope this information has been helpful for you. If you have any questions, reach out to me at questions@creditkristi.com. And until next time, my friends, stay well.
Subscribe now and share with a friend to stay in the loop for new credit content and insider tips to maximize your credit knowledge. And follow Credit Kristi on Instagram.